Am I on now? Okay. I'm Jim Marston. I'm going to have a call to order and then a roll call and then introduction of the city staff and anybody from the public who wants to introduce themselves.
Chair Marston,
Here.
Vice Chair Sorgman,
Here.
Committee Member Kovich,
Here.
Committee Member Kuntz,
Here.
Committee Member Luckett, Committee Member Rassler, Committee Member Tejada,
Here.
Council Member Oscar Gutierrez, Brian Demore,
Here.
John Doimus, Sarita King,
Here.
and Raymond Lamb.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience want to introduce themselves? You don't need to.
Hello, my name is Sam Hitchens, and I live in Goleta now. I lived in Santa Barbara for 3 years, and I've lived in Goleta for 3 years, but I work at the Santa Barbara Museum of Art. And we're implementing a lot of access points, and we're looking for ways that we can be more involved in the community. So I'm just here to listen and learn.
Thank you. Okay, we have a guest speaker, our city administrator, but before we start, I want to have Elizabeth, our vice chair, is just going to mention the meeting we had with her last month. So,
Good morning, everyone. Yes, we had an informal meeting with our city administrator, Kelly McAdoo. Thank you so much for coming, and I know you're busy and sharing some time with us. We had an informal meeting just to review some of the issues that the Access Advisory Committee has discussed over time. I guess the major one is the transition plan and what things have been done or haven't been done, and how we're going to get through that process, and also just the fact of how the ADA coordinator is set up and really not having sufficient, I don't know if power is the right word, or hierarchy in the system, because the departments work so independently of one another, so that we can try to coordinate efforts regarding accessibility, construction work, compliance, so that everyone is on board and doing it correctly, because what you see is a lot of agencies undertaking projects that aren't compliant. So we were hoping just to open up that dialogue to have you try to see what we can do to make it more effective and more efficient, so that we're using our money wisely. Oh,
thank you so much for being here.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Elizabeth, for that summary of our meeting. For those who haven't met me yet, Kelly McAdoo. I'm the city administrator for the city of Santa Barbara. Started last May, so on, I think, month 9 now. So not new, but still relatively new. Moved down here from the San Francisco Bay Area, where I was served for local government for about 25 years, most recently with the city of Hayward, where I was city manager for 8 years, and with the city for 14. Also worked with the cities of Fremont and Palo Alto. Very, very happy to be down in Santa Barbara. It's been an amazing transition. The community and the organization has been very welcoming, and just learning a lot, getting around and trying to do meet and greets with a lot of individuals. And so I'm just really happy to be here with you all today. I know I've heard some of the concerns that we've talked about, and I know our staff are working on a number of the issues, and particularly with the transition plan. And I think our new facilities manager, Megan Salas, we've had a follow-up meeting internally to talk about the status of the transition plan and kind of the work that's been done around that, and how we can continue to put resources towards that going forward, and the work. I know particularly there was a couple of issues that have been raised. One was with the work at the Library Plaza project, and I wanted to let everyone know that modifications and changes to address the concerns that you all had raised should have been completed today, I think, is what I heard. So that was great. The project wasn't finished yet. It hadn't been accepted by we hadn't accepted it from the contractor, so we were able to make those modifications. And then I know Interim Director Demore and I are working on the accessibility parking at City Hall and trying to figure out what the solution is there. So we will definitely report back on that. I know there was another concern about the Fiesta 5 Theater, which the city leases to the film festival, and I'm not sure if the team is going to address that, but we are working with them to try to figure out how to address some of the concerns that were raised there as well. So happy to answer any questions, but just really wanted to come and meet all of you this morning, and thank you for your service, and just know that we continue to support the partnership and working together to figure out how we continue to move the transition plan forward.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the members?
I have some questions. Okay, I'm on. First of all, I want to thank you for coming on and being here. I watch the city council meetings, and I see that you are making things happen and pushing decisions, and I'm like excited. I really appreciate that powerful woman that you are. Now, I've been here several times talking about accessibility in parks, and the park I go to twice a day is Shoreline, and there's a lot of people in walkers and canes that use that because it's a flat surface. And there's about, I would say, 7 or 8 signs that says no bikes and no wheeled vehicles, and they come through in mass sometimes, very fast, sometimes 6 of them. And I'll say this is pedestrians only, and they don't care. And my issue also on State Street is the bikes. And I have been fearful of walking across the street. And I know the city council said they were going to start doing enforcement and impoundment of bikes. And I wrote to the council about getting licenses on bikes so people can report them. So how do we make our city streets safe for pedestrians and the handicaps and our parks?
So it's actually very timely. The proposed amendments to the bike and e-bike ordinance are actually coming to council this coming Tuesday, February 25th. And so that's an opportunity to share input at the city council meeting. We are creating some additional enforcement opportunities for the police department, actually creating a definition of e-bike, and so it gives the police department a way to enforce in a little bit more strict way, and sort of where are e-bikes allowed, where are they not allowed. And so I would encourage you to also share, if you wanted to make comments or send comments in to the council before Tuesday's council meeting. The council will be considering.
And when is that?
Next Tuesday, February 25th at 2 p.m.
Okay, and it'll be on Zoom?
Yes, there is a Zoom access
Is
option.
there a walking police force downtown like they have in Goleta?
There is not right now, in that I understand there used to be. We used to have a downtown sort of patrol, and with our vacancies, we have about 10% vacancies in our police department right now. We just haven't been able to staff that particular beat, but I know the chief is working hard to fill her vacancies, and definitely wants to maybe think about having that back in downtown again. I know, there is a commitment to, if we can make these changes to the ordinance, police department enforcing on e-bikes.
Or even a volunteer force with, some kind
It's a little trickier to use volunteers to do enforcement, but I think if you can't make the council meeting on Tuesday, I would strongly encourage an email to the council, but you can read the staff report is available for Tuesday.
Yeah, I'll be out of town.
Perfect.
And the other big issue is parades. And I am on the special events committee, and we've been pushing for a designated space for the handicapped to view parades. So there's parking, bathrooms, and space, and covered space. And last year for Fiesta Parade, I put a little blurb in the Voice magazine, and we had maybe about 50 spaces set up, and they all got taken over by seniors.
If I could interrupt for just a moment, the city was great in terms of setting up the space and designating it and creating it. How it ended up playing out, please continue.
Yeah, so it got taken over by seniors, so by the time the handicap arrived in wheelchairs from, what's your visit? Hillside and Momentum, there was no place for them to sit even in their own wheelchairs. So I'm hoping, we're going to have another meeting, but what I'd like to see is seniors, a designated space for seniors to be able to sit and watch and participate, and also designated for the handicap.
It's actually also very timely. We had a meeting with the organizers for a variety of different parades throughout the city, probably about a month ago now. So Fiesta, Solstice, 4th of July, the former holiday parades, sort of got all the organizers in the room together to try to think about sort of standardizing parade routes and standardizing requirements. And so I appreciate you bringing that up. As we continue that conversation with them, I think it's a great opportunity, because if we have standardized routes and then we can create sort of standard, so everyone in the different communities know where their access points are, because we know what routes the parades always use. And so I think that's a great, I appreciate that feedback, and we'll bring it back to the working group.
Yeah, so I'm requesting designated with the sign seniors only, with seniors with walking problems. So
okay. Mobility challenge, yeah.
wheelchairs or walkers.
Okay.
And then not just seniors, because there's a lot of us around. And then special for the disabled. I appreciate that so much.
Karen, can I just interject real quick? And there is an ad hoc group within this Access Advisory Committee specifically focused on special events like
great.
parades
Okay.
and whatnot, and we would love to be involved in those conversations.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me know that. As soon as we have some additional thoughts about the designated routes, because there'd be like a short route and a long route, and then, thinking we'd be happy to engage with that ad hoc committee.
Thank you.
May I piggyback on that question about the e-bike problem? I've mentioned this to council for quite a few years now. What they are not, there's a big pro-bike group and an or a safety group. What we don't realize is that I call them at city council electric motorcycles, okay? Those self-propelled bikes are not the same as a regular e-bike. And that to me is, because I live downtown, I see who the hooligans are. I hate to use that word because I used to be one, but
At least you know what it means.
yes. I just think that there should be some kind of ordinance that says no self-propelled bikes on pedestrian walkways or.
And that's what the new ordinance does say.
Okay.
It prohibits bikes on sidewalks except in cases where it is a danger to the bike to be in the street, and there's an exception. So say they have to go up on the sidewalk to avoid a car or something like
Okay.
that. But for the most part, bikes would now be prohibited on sidewalks. So that would give our police department the ability to issue tickets if the bikes are on the sidewalk. And it also sets up different classes of bikes. So there's, regular standard non-motorized bike. There's kind of the basic e-bike, which I think is, it's a little bit self-propelled, but it doesn't have the motor that can go 40 miles an hour. And then there's, I think it's class 3, which is the ones that have the very strong motors that can go at great speeds.
But would that keep people from using the self-propelled electric motorcycles on the promenade, is my question.
Well, right now there is the bike lane. So as long as they're in the bike lane, technically they are allowed. But I think it's making sure that we can enforce and keep them in the designated bike area and not on other parts of the promenade.
Does that bike lane have a speed limit?
I don't know that's one thing I don't know, and I cannot remember if I don't know, Brian, if you know, I can't remember if we proposed a speed limit. That has been something that has been brought up, and I know a couple of council members will likely ask about that on Tuesday's meeting. I cannot remember if the ordinance sets a speed limit.
And there are sections of the promenade where it's walk your bike, where they literally don't want you riding it at all.
Right, for the film festival, they had dismount here. And I watched 10 people, adults with kids, no one dismounted, no one.
Well,
And these were adults they weren't kids. So these signs don't work. I liked Oscar Gutierrez saying about speed bumps, And also, we didn't have a problem when the bikes were on separate sides of the street. And right now, they're taking up a bigger lane than a car, and they're going faster than cars were ever allowed on state.
Hey. Yeah, let's see, is this working? The microphone?
Yeah, I think so.
Mic
yeah,
down.
so that walking your bike actually takes up a lot of room in itself, and that can really get in the way of canes, especially canes or wheelchairs probably in its own way.
Chair Marston, I would like to point out that we're getting pretty far afield and we have a schedule to maintain here.
That sounds good. And are there any general comments for Ms. McAdoo before she leaves from the public?
General well, mine is just thank you.
Yeah.
Keep up the great work. It's a great start.
Thank you all.
Thanks for being here.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay, next are committee member reports and staff announcements.
Other public comment?
I just asked for public
Oh, okay.
for her,
No, just other general public.
General, okay.
but that's moved down.
Okay.
So for my report, I presented at the city council the AAC's concerns about State Street accessibility, the need for accessible transit, and also just to tell you, some of us are meeting with the new council member, Wendy Santamaria, on Monday to bring her up to date on accessibility issues in town. Any other staff reports?
I would just, if I would follow up on Karen's request that we have that next meeting regarding special events, and reconvene our subgroup. I think Nick and myself and Karen are happy to meet with them at any time.
Okay. Okay, if there's no other comments from the members and staff announcements?
And Chair Marston, I'll just make a quick mention of some transitions within Public Works. Many of you may have heard, but I'm now the acting Public Works Director as of last week, so that was a recent change. I'm still going to be involved with AAC. This isn't anticipated to be a long-term acting role, so I will still be involved with AAC. There has been a plan all along to eventually transition the coordinator role to Craig Schallenberger, who's presented to you all at different times on the transition plan. He'll be presenting later today. The timing of that is still somewhat to be determined. He did reach out to me when my acting role was announced and said, well, if you're ready to do that transition, I'm ready to step in. So perhaps that'll be for the next meeting, but I'll make sure whatever does happen with that you all are informed. And regardless, I'm still going to be very involved, probably attending all of the meetings, even if I'm not in that official ADA coordinator role. We'll see how that goes.
Well, I'd like to offer my congratulations on the city's confidence in you and your abilities to, put you in that interim position and where that leads, but everything that you've taken on as staffing changes have occurred, this piece, that piece, another piece, I just think it should be on the record what an incredible job you do for this particular committee, and wish you well with your other responsibilities.
Thank you.
I share that sentiment and would add that I'm very optimistic about Craig Schallenberger in the role as ADA coordinator. I feel that he's got the skills and the I'm struggling for the word, but he shows empathy for accessibility. He shows knowledge on the subject, and I welcome him in that role because I recognize that you have way too many responsibilities, and you keep getting more. And while I very much appreciate all that you have done for accessibility in this town, I have always wanted someone who had a little bit more bandwidth for us. So while I will miss you in this role, I think that you've got a good, competent replacement as the ADA coordinator.
I want to, excuse me, I want to chime in too. This is my first term, and just from all the other members, having spoken to them in the past, I think the consensus is that you have been the most receptive of the ADA coordinators who they've worked with, that you've shown empathy, that you've taken time, and that you've reviewed and, considered the comments that are being made, which is different than past 88 coordinators. So, thank you.
All right, and then just one other really quick thing. I think this can fall under the staff announcements, but some of you may have noticed the materials that we've put out for this agenda has a different looking font, and that was per a recommendation from the Braille Institute that Sarita King became aware of. It's a font that is for people with certain sight challenges. It's a little bit easier to read. So in case anybody noticed that, that's the reason for that change. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be Atkinson Hyperlegible, it's called.
That sounds like the official name. Yes, thank you.
And since we're talking about the change for Brian, I want to point out that our good friend Ashley, who took over as the ADA coordinator.
Gotcha.
Ashley,
It was on.
am I on now? Okay. I just want to point out that Ashley Shue, who took over ADA coordinator when Brian left, and was very good, she's now she's taken over Brian's job now as principal engineer. Is that?
Ashley Sizo will be the city engineer while I'm in the Public Works
Okay.
Director role, which she's done before and done it very well.
Yes.
So, yes.
She's also, I think, very good at her work.
That's all I had for staff announcements.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I'll just make one announcement. This is also, I found out, National Engineers Week.
Oh, right.
So, so thank you all engineers. Okay. Now we're at public comments. Now this is, you get up to 5 minutes for any comment on anything that's not on the agenda first. And I want to point out our procedures here. After each presentation, members ask questions, then we have public comments, and then we have member discussion. So if you are on Zoom, please raise your hand when you want to make a comment, and if you're want a public comment in the room, please fill out a speaker slip. So I know we have one public comment.
Yes, Chair Marston, there is one general public comment. It was submitted by Roger Derling, and he's here to present or to make a few comments.
Good morning, committee. Thank you for the time. My name is Roger Derling. I'm the executive director of the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, which just wrapped a few days ago. We're excited to share with you a brief introduction to our work at 916 State Street, SBIFF's new film center. We're working with the city staff to give a full presentation to the community at a future date. This spring, we'll be temporarily closing down the theater for a state-of-the-art renovation. This will include new projections, sound, seating, as well as a new look and design. As we have conveyed to the city staff, we're looking to do everything by the book and go beyond if possible. And this will include making the space fully accessible to all in our community, as we did with the Riviera Theater renovation in 2017. We look forward to returning to share our plans and hear your thoughts and comments so we can address any concerns regarding accessibility and life safety.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple comments. How long will you be closed for?
We're hoping that it's only going to be 4 months, but in best laid plans, that's normally not usually the case. I mean, the Riviera was a 5-month process.
And will there be a change to the wheelchair access?
Correct, yes.
Okay,
And the entrance, the way it is right now is like several steps down. We're planning to change that to make
okay.
it easier. And,
So,
and
so
the-
people who are walking with walkers who don't need that wheelchair elevator, will they be able to access the theater just on a ramp type thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, due to the being below ground, there's no way to put a ramp in there. It would be
Oh,
just,
okay.
unfortunately.
This is Sean Pratt, Managing Director.
And not from the back door or any other access point?
We can definitely look into backdoor ramps and so forth.
Yeah, that is really not.
Can I just share?
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, jump
That is
in.
not. You don't want to send someone to the back of house. You know,
I'd love to share a little history that I'm privy to on that theater. I remember in the early 80s when it was a new theater, the accessible entrance was on the east side of the building, by the elevator from the public parking lot adjacent to Marshall's, and it was a much lower descent. There was only maybe a 3-foot or 4-foot drop. That they had a little porch lift, a vertical lift, not an elevator, but those wheelchair lifts are extremely problematic in a number of ways. They're a maintenance nightmare. They're a procedural nightmare. They're anytime you can avoid putting in a lift by putting in a ramp, I think it's worth the initial expense to avoid the maintenance expense. And I think that, or sorry, not to avoid, but the initial expense will pay off. And if there was any way to bring people in on a ramp, I would encourage that. Because
We will definitely look, and we're right now speaking with the architects.
Yeah.
And we will definitely bring this up to them and address the situation.
Great.
You have my word.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. So last year, our recent former board member, Bob Burnham, had brought up the desire to have audio description tracks for at least some of the films. That I didn't get to go this year. Was any of that able to happen? I know it is a struggle when the producers themselves don't put on audio tracks, but
Correct.
there are some advances with AI that could make it more possible.
That is a very good point. The issue is that we're dealing with a lot of independent films and low-budget films, and they don't provide that. It's when you're dealing with major studios films that's readily accessible. But when possible, we will provide that service. And also, we are installing, in all of our theaters, we installed a hearing loop. And we'll continue doing that at the new refurbished theater.
I'm wondering, because you do have about 600 volunteers, right?
Yes.
If there could be sort of a one-on-one type description, like the person would sit next to the visually impaired and maybe have a quiet microphone or something to say, okay, the person's now going outside and getting into their car. Because the blind can't see the action, they can just hear the words.
Well, for stage plays, there's often a way to do it with headphones, even if the human describer is not there. That's like the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, for example, when I was growing up, and some Broadway as well.
I wonder also if there might be an opportunity with volunteers to implement the audio tracks, locally and share it with the original production staff. to, coordinate a partnership.
I promise you to look into it
Great, thanks,
as well.
Roger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for a wonderful film festival.
Well, thank you, and I want to reiterate that we don't want to cut corners, and we want to work with you guys and make every effort to do the right thing. So, and you have my word on that.
Thank you.
Having been on the committee for a couple years now, I can promise you, they won't be shy. And they'll be eager to work with you as well.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
I just
Thank
have a
you.
quick
Thank
question.
you. Yes.
Nick mentioned the former door that came up by marshals in the elevators, and how all of a sudden that door was locked up and no one knew about it. So do you
What
guys know about that door
Correct,
there?
correct. What happened is that the theater was remodeled. It used to be small, fewer screenings. When they expanded from 3 to 5, they reconfigured the downstairs. And that entry right now is for deliveries and for garbage. It was reconfigured. Yes, it was the entry for outside ADA, but they reconfigured. There used to be two exit doors up above in the projection booth. With the reconfiguring of the theater, as I speak, they closed off the upstairs as well. We're looking into bringing back, for safety reasons, 2 exits on the upstairs at our expense, and we'll see what we can do with a different entry from the outside. So we don't have, it's impossible to create a ramp in that entryway that we all know, the entryway from State Street. It's rather steep.
Right.
But, I love an obstacle. I love a challenge. My 23 years at the festival, whenever I encounter a tough situation, my dad always say, paint him in a corner, he'll figure out a way. So I'm painted in a corner and we'll figure it out.
Thank you very much.
Thank-
And we're looking forward to seeing your new plans, so good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is chair and vice chair elections. Does anyone have any
we just did that.
nominations?
Well, I don't know if Elizabeth is interested in chairing another committee, but she does a fantastic job on every other committee that I know her to chair, and I'd welcome her as chair here if Chair Marston wants a break.
Well, I also think she'd be a great chair, but we talked about this earlier, and she says she's just rather not this year anyway, so, but I'll leave it up to you. The ball's in your court.
I don't have any issue with that. It's just that I think that you have so much history. This is my first term, so I don't know all of the discussions that you've had on projects and those kinds of things. So I think some continuity.
So how about a suggestion, Elizabeth, where you chair and current Chair Marston steps down to be the vice chair to work directly with you to make sure there's that transitional opportunity. I don't know if I'd call it mentoring. That doesn't sound like it's really what's necessary, but the transition and the continuity and having somebody that is your partner,
Yeah.
as it were,
Sure.
to pick their brain.
Yeah, I am open to that. I'm just, like I say, want continuity, and you have all the history and information because you've been on this board for so long, and I don't want to lose that.
So are you ready to be the chair and I'll be the vice chair? Is that
Sure,
what you're-
sure.
How does that sound, really?
That sounds great, as long as we're not pressuring you into it.
No,
Okay.
we had discussions about it, so.
I
All right.
wasn't included. I didn't even know that was a possibility.
I don't know if we need a vote on that, but let's do it officially.
You need a motion and then a vote.
Okay.
I move to nominate Elizabeth Sorgman as chair and Jim Marston as vice chair.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you.
And now you're in charge.
Oh, geez, okay. So, approval of the minutes. Did everyone have a chance to take a look at the video or have any comments? So does someone want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
You want second?
I'll second.
All right, so all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 All right. So our next item is sign ordinance, but I don't see Mr. Doimus here.
So, Chair Sorgman, yeah, you can hear, John Doimus is online. He had, it's a great reason why he's online. I think, if I remember correctly, his daughter's competing in some athletic thing, if I remember correctly. But anyway, it's for a good reason. He's not able to be here in town today, but we did work it out where he's able to present remotely, and we did hear his voice, so it sounds like things are working. Leilani's going to be advancing the slides, so it's a little bit more difficult when we do the virtual to have like an informal. So I would say just, let him get through his presentation, and then we can do any questions and comments afterwards. So go ahead.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Commission. Yes, it was my daughter's gymnastics competition. So, I always get nervous when I'm participating remotely. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Great. Well, thank you, Commission. I want to present to you amendments to the sign ordinance. Just to give a little background, we presented this in October to the ordinance committee, and with the new amendments, and they wanted us to do some more outreach with various groups, real estate agents, downtown business, different boards and commissions. And so I think it's important that I give a little background in terms of what we're amending, what we're changing, the reasons why, and then kind of at the end of it, we'll talk about kind of what the input that's really crucial that we want to hear that's more in your jurisdiction in terms of signs in the public right-of-way, sandwich board signs, A-frame signs, and all that. So I'll get to that at the end, and then we can have a discussion on that. So just to give a background, the areas of change, we're not looking to change anything aesthetically. So our office has kind of led this changes, these amendments. We're not going to get into aesthetic designs for sure, the city attorney's office. But we needed to make changes to have a constitutionally sound ordinance. And we needed to update some outdated provisions in there, and we also wanted to kind of create a separate chapter, which I'm not going to go over today because it really doesn't deal with this board, but a section on murals. When someone's displaying a mural on a building wall, etc., that is visible to the public, and having its own, because there's always been a question: is it a sign or is it not a sign? It is communicative speech. And it has also its own constitutional protections. Next slide, please. So some of the major changes we looked at was, do we want to have any exceptions of placing private signs in the public right-of-way? Right now, the ordinance does have one, and that's unconstitutional, is we allow real estate signs in the public right-of-way. And we'll get into the reason why that's unconstitutional, but do we want to, is it going to be ban it completely? Are we going to allow signs in the public right away, private signs, or are we going to have some kind of time, place, manner regulations? Look at that, right? We also wanted to do this in terms of the major effects that if we're going to have a true updated ordinance that we can enforce on A-frame signs. As you've noticed and probably have rightfully complained about, there hasn't been much enforcement on that. One of the difficulties we haven't been able to enforce is because of the unconstitutional current condition of our ordinance. And so we've been very particular in terms of our ability to enforce because of that. I'll explain further on why in that. We also, when we have board review, we wanted to not have any review on content. We wanted the sign committee to just focus on aesthetics. And then finally, we wanted to remove any content-based inconsistencies. And as I mentioned, murals being their own chapter. Next slide, please. So how we got here was, of course, a case I'll go over in a second in 2014 from the U.S. Supreme Court that really upended our sign ordinance that we had there. We also had code enforcement complaints over signs in the public right-of-way and the proliferation of illegal signs. And we'll see it up and down, potentially on the State Street Promenade. And then When we did originally have a sign committee around 2017-16 to discuss changes, and they met for about a year, but it ended up dissolving. And so nothing was being done with the sign ordinance. So we decided in the summer of 2024 to kind of look at the ordinance and make amendments and just go ahead and do it, and then start getting input, because we eventually needed the ball rolling. Because technically our ordinance, I view it as about at least a decade out of place. Next slide, please. So here's the big impetus of why we had to do this and why I think it's a decade out of place. There's this case out of Arizona, Reed versus Town of Gilbert, that's had very different signs, and there they said they allowed freedom of speech because they looked at the content of the sign in terms of regulation, and that's the biggest key. If anything you take about it, what makes a sign ordinance unconstitutional? If you have to read the sign to see if an exception applies, that's when you're in trouble. It's okay to talk about where it's placed, the size of it, if it glows or not. When you're looking at what the sign actually says, the content of it, and to determine its constitutionality or its enforcement or its exception, that's when you run into problems. So if you need to read, then you potentially are violating the Constitution. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of need to read signs, right? We have temporary signs for banners, for open businesses, real estate signs, right? As I mentioned, we allow them right away. So these are signs we have inconsistencies in our current ordinance right now that, there's an exception for this or there's an exception for that, but it's based on what the sign says. Open house, new business, etc. That's where we run afoul of this Reed case. So when we're looking at it, we had to sit there and remove these exceptions based on content. Next slide, please. So what does this law mean? The current proposal of the ordinance right now, we no longer regulate based on what the sign says. We regulate based on zoning districts, time, place, manners. And when we do any type of, we still have to do it with strict scrutiny, because signs are viewed by the Supreme Court as speech, so the First Amendment applies. Now, what's important to know is placing signs in the public right-of-way or any other signs doesn't apply to government speech. What I mean by that? Speech issued by Caltrans, right, or by the city, or if they're placing a hazard sign or a traffic sign or all that, we don't have to comply with the sign ordinance because that's separate. Where the First Amendment comes into the realm of discussion is when the government, so in this case, when the city is regulating private signs. It doesn't apply when the government has a sign. A lot of times you don't want to have that type of regulation because of public safety, for informational signs, safety signs, etc. Next slide, please. So here are some of the changes we've made with that. We've added definitions to commercial speech, non-commercial speech. We kind of created an exception for everyone to have. Instead of having these banners and everything for businesses, we have a kind of a sign based on certain dimensions where you can place in a window, everything that, is plain, basic, and in terms of its size. It's not going to detract from the aesthetics, but it kind of creates this free speech zone when it comes to signs, the ability of people to have, whether it's a private property or a commercial business, just so we're not running afoul of inconsistencies and allowing for that. And then, like I said, there's no more exceptions for grand openings, everything else. It's these just general signs that people can place in their business without going to sign committee, etc. Now, we're not talking about outside the property. We're talking about in the property or a person's home. Next slide, please. We also have the same thing continues. There's no portable signs, no off-premises signs. We also have a true definition of one thing we can regulate when we talk about free speech is obscene signs, and we define it and we base it off state law, the California Penal Code, of what's defined as obscene language. And then again, there's no requirement to go to sign committee if you have a current sign that's been approved and you're not changing anything but the messaging. We had that before. Why would a sign committee view messaging? Again, that's content-based. That's First Amendment issue. Next slide, please. And also, as you see there, we had sign committee review where we're really looking, in terms of the review, they're really looking at the aesthetics, the placement, etc. We're moving any content based on that as well. Next slide, please. And so finally, we also had some outdated provisions when it comes to enforcement, when it comes to abandoned signs, signs that are considered unsafe. So we are regulating that to make sure we can deal with unsafe signs, signs that are abandoned. That gives the city the ability to quickly address those issues and not wait around. If we provide a quick notice, if no one claims the signs or addresses the legal violations, whether they're just in a bad condition, they can fall on someone, whether there's electrical wiring is not sound, it gives the city the ability to immediately confiscate and remove those signs for public safety. Next slide, please. And so finally, this is kind of where we get the nitty gritty. We really appreciate this board's input. So the current ordinance allows exceptions for real estate signs, right? And our original draft, when we went to ordinance committee, we just removed it. We had no signs at all no private signs to be placed on the public right of way. There was a push from council to talk to the real estate and different commercial entities saying, these signs are valuable in terms of the ability to sell their homes. We can't create an exception. We also talked about our current ordinance right now as it stands has no allowance for A-frame signs, sandwich board signs that you see in the public right of way. We've heard from downtown business organizations and everything else saying there is a strong commercial, need for this. So what we want to do is we're hearing from different groups, and we felt it was really important to come to the Access Advisory Committee today to get your input. One thought of regulation, at least when it comes to the public right of way, we're not dealing with on sidewalks, etc., is to be able to place open house signs, but and basically any sign during the weekend. That's one proposal but during the weekdays, Monday through Friday, there could be no sign. It also coincides at least with enforcement. It's very hard to get enforcement during the weekend. So at least if people are placing signs during the weekdays, we will enforce on that. As well as the other part we're going to be doing is not allowing, do we want to have a place or regulation where we would allow sandwich board signs or A-frame signs on the sidewalk or regulate? And that's where we really want to get the input from. Right now, as I mentioned, there's some proposal for having signs in the public right-of-way for only the weekend. It wouldn't just be open house signs, it'd be any other signs. And right now, we still have no proposal or no allowance of A-frame signs and continuing that. Like I said, there's been a strong push by commercial entities, but we feel still that there's a public safety access issue with that, and we wanted to hear from the commission today. And with that concludes my presentation. Again, I thank you for accommodating me as I attend my daughter's gymnastics competition out of town, and I really do want to hear the input, especially when it comes to these signs in the public right away. Thank you.
All right, so does members of the board have any comments?
I want to thank Mr. Darmus for the presentation first, and then I got a couple questions that occurred during the presentation, occurred to me, and may kind of lead to a suggestion. I notice during campaign cycles a proliferation of corrugated plastic signs that go up all over the place in the public right-of-way. And it was always something of a nuisance to me. I felt like littering. These things stay up forever, and I know it's likely a maintenance issue. I see student athletic teams promoting. I see small businesses promoting. But as much as those bother me, they bother me a lot less than an A-frame in the middle of the sidewalk. The A-frames take up a lot of real estate. They have a large footprint, and they are frequently put up on the sidewalk, blocking a ramp, blocking a crosswalk push to walk button. And I don't see that with these corrugated plastic signs that look, they're not attractive, but
Neither are the A-frames.
yeah, neither are the A-frames. And to my way of thinking, you can't put the corrugated plastic sign in a sidewalk in blocking a ramp. You can't put it blocking a button. It's always staked in to the landscaping nearby, and therefore, almost by definition, out of the access path. And so I wonder if the real estate community would accept that compromise, that we only allow the staked style corrugated. They should be cheaper. They don't have to put in as much material to build the A-frame. And I think it would be a lot easier to enforce and a lot less blocking public access.
So I just want to chime in on my knee-jerk reaction to allowing all signs on the weekend. It sounds like you're saying the disabled don't go downtown or in the areas
Bingo.
where these signs are. I mean, is that what we're saying? So, subtly? That's the message that I got. Is that, okay, so we'll allow it on the weekend, so that means disabled don't get to go anywhere on the weekend.
That was my comment as well, Chair. I absolutely agree with Member Kuntz that, the use of those cardboard corrugated signs that are put on metal stands and usually put in shrubbery or, along the side of a sidewalk, for example, keeps everything out of the right-of-way. Agree 100% with that as a viable solution to allow whatever signage, but not to impede anybody through the public right-of-way. And similarly, I agree 100% with our chair, and that's what struck me the most. Why weekends? Where does that make sense in anybody's thinking that it's critical that we don't let signage impede the flow, a foot flow, or wheelchairs, or people with disabilities from getting to and from wherever they're going. But geez, on the weekends, who cares? I just don't understand that thinking.
If I could answer that question, that's
Please,
I don't
please.
be completely blunt and honest as board. A very strong push by real estate associations wanting to have their signs, because what this ordinance did was.
Right. So what?
What this,
That's a completely non-valid,
I'm not-
non-warranted argument.
May I
I'm
finish?
sorry.
I'll
Yes.
just finish.
Yes.
So I, as a city attorney, I don't create policy, right? So my draft had no exceptions, no thing. The current ordinance allowed for real estate signs. And what I said is it's either an all or nothing proposition. You cannot have an exception for real estate signs to the exclusion of everything else. So you either allow all signs in the public right of way or you allow zero. So the strong push, and it's really important, I guess, for this board, for the city council and the ordinance committee to hear from this board, because the push was to accommodate the real estate associations. And so they're like, well, we do our business on the weekend. And so the push was, well, then allow us just to have it on the weekend. But then it's like, if you're going to allow it on the weekend, you just can't allow again. We're back to square one of just allowing real estate signs. So I think it's important, like I said, the first draft, if you could look back in October, had no signs in the public right of way, no A-frame signs, etc. We've been getting a lot of push or public pressure in terms of trying to deviate from what we originally had in terms of our first draft. So I think it's important that this committee, and at least when I also present, is I'm going to echo what this committee has in its feelings. I also think that, Commissioner, if you do make an exception, I think Commissioner Kuntz makes a really good point in terms of, at least when it comes to accessibility, if you are going to compromise, the A-frame signs create much more of an issue when it comes to access versus the signs that you kind of, in the grass in the corner, stick in the ground for open house signs. So maybe maybe that is a point too that could be raised, and I would appreciate the deliberate. So I appreciate allowing me to expand. But I think it's important that this isn't the history of where it came. What our office brought forward was no signs anywhere, and the pressure we've been getting since, and we've been at for 5 months, and that's why this was an important stop to talk to this committee today, so we have that discussion. So I appreciate that.
I think it's critical that you resist that pressure It's pressure from a relatively few in the community, businesses primarily. They do an incredible service, and we need housing, we need real estate agents, and no issue with that. However, that's a relatively small segment of our community market, if you will, of the public that, is going to be in the right of way. And to, kneel to that small but powerful group's pressure at the disadvantage of a larger, much larger proportion of our population who need accessibility would be, in my mind, a huge mistake. And I would encourage you to go back to the original draft where there are no signs ever, weekdays, weekends, in the right of way. There's no need for them.
In the right of way, I believe we need 4 feet width, correct? Okay. And also for signs, we need, if they're posted vertical, they need to be 7 feet for clearance of people walking, say the blind or handicap, so they don't bump their heads. And I want to follow up on Michael's comments. And the lawsuit in Gilbert, I looked up, was regarding church signs being placed in the public, and the city ruled that the church signs could not be put out, but every other business's signs could. So it became an infringement on free speech for churches, religion. And what we're saying here is having signs imposed on the 4 feet right away is discriminating against the disabled, the ADA laws. And we cannot allow one business to impose itself on ADA laws regardless of their political or economic clout. Okay? And we've made this an issue before in this committee with Brian, and he, I believe, notified the Board of Realtors to tell all the real estate people to keep the signs out of that 4-foot right-of-way. And I hope the city enacts that as an ordinance.
I'd like to ask Mr. Doimus if he's aware of any entitlement or civil right that realtors have to place signs in the public right-of-way, because I know that there is a clear civil rights that the right-of-way be left accessible. So I don't believe realtors or any business for that matter has a right, and I don't think that any ordinance that the city might enact can legally usurp the disabled civil rights.
So I think Skylar wants to say
Craig,
something. Hold on.
There is no right, there is no special right or categorical right that allow for real estate signs in the public right away. And if you have an equal ordinance that says, for example, no signs in the public right away, then that's the most sound, because you're not favoring one versus the other. I've heard arguments there's a strong governmental interest because of housing and all that, but that doesn't give an entitlement, like you said, or a certain right. So no, there is no right.
Local municipalities and states may enact stricter accessibility laws, but they cannot create laws that lessen accessibility. And I think allowing signs in the public right-of-way lessens accessibility.
All right, Skylar wants to say
So
something.
yeah, maybe worth pointing out to some of the people who want the signs there that some of the more assertive of us with canes or whatnot might knock them over. So it's, if they're in the way and if they're not that heavy. So, it is more in their interest to move them away.
So I think the board's made it pretty clear,
Yeah.
the message to John, that you can communicate to others.
Yes.
And just as informational from the different seminars and webinars and, participation in other groups, I think it's, the percentage that I've heard is anywhere from 25 to 32% of the population has some kind of disability. So that's a really big part of the population that is being impacted by this. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate the board's input on this. This is what we were looking for why we wanted to come here. I think if you're going to have a thorough outreach, you need to hear these points. It goes beyond just economic interest. And like I said, the lawyer in me loves an ordinance that's just is easy. No signs in the public right of way. It makes it easy for enforcement. It makes it. I don't have to worry about challenges because there's nothing. Everyone's being treated equally. There's no signs, no exceptions. And I do hear that. Like I said, if I may ask the board though, because I did think Commissioner Coons did created interesting point. Obviously, the board's preference, from my understanding today, is that no signs in the public right of way, and that's abundantly clear. When it comes to the issue of not allowing A-frame signs, but allowing, for example, stake signs, for example, in those sections of the public right of way, how does the board feel on that issue?
Well,
I just wanted to get clarification on
I
that.
think just what I heard, so let's define the right of way. So there's the walkable right of way, and then there's the right of way where there's planting and the street.
Correct. The non-walkable
Right, the
right-of-way.
non-walkable, I don't think anyone would have an issue with a sign there because it's not impacting someone.
I would argue that there are some places around town
Okay.
where the parkway is grass, and if you're parking on the street and trying to access the sidewalk, you have to cross the parkway, and I could imagine that being problematic for some to reach the sidewalk. But I think it's a lesser issue, and I think it's a reasonable compromise that I'd be willing to make to allow the staked signs in the parkway, but nothing on the paved, no A-frames.
Okay. Does everyone feel, I'm seeing a lot of heads saying yes.
Well,
Anyone against?
I have a thought on the sidewalks. If we have something that are real wide, like on State Street, do we still want to just keep 4 feet clear, or are we going to say no?
No, I think it's no to anything in the walkable area.
Okay.
Yeah,
The public right away.
it's a public, yeah,
It,
yeah.
I would just, in terms of Nick's, I'm sorry, thank you. In terms of Member Kunz's comments, where there is that, grass area, between, I'm just thinking from the road or where you've parked your car to get to the sidewalk.
Yep.
The other side of the sidewalk should be where the buildings and things are. Just
Yeah.
put the signage on the other side, don't put it in that median.
Okay, so.
That's all I'm saying.
yeah.
There's no need to have it in that median that somebody might have to cross
What-
to get to the sidewalk.
Let me
Just put
ask-
it on the other side.
Let me ask this question of Mr. Doimus and the board. First, Mr. Doimus, do you see that it would be reasonably easy to differentiate between the portion of the public right-of-way that I believe Public Works refers to as the parkway? Can we differentiate between parkway that is likely to be walked on and parkway that cannot be walked on because the landscaping is too dense for walking? If it's grass, that can be walked on. If it's decomposed granite, that can be walked on. Or in the case of a wheelchair, rolled across. I would like to differentiate between those types of parkway infill and not allow it on the walkable infill.
I think absolutely. I think we can define such a thing where it's like the parkways, but not in areas that are commonly paths of travel. And also, well, when we do that, it'll be we'll do education to outreach to show what we mean. I think that's very doable. I think it's a really good suggestion, and so yes, that we can put such a thing in an ordinance and do education outreach of like, okay, here's where it's accepted in the parkway type of area, but here's where it's not because people generally travel use that to get to access point, or it's an access point. And the other point I do want to make too, I think that's really important when it comes to the A-frame signs and being in the sidewalk or being placed there. The current ordinance does not allow it, and the draft that I had continued, that our office had, continued with that. We weren't allowing it. So So what's being asked is something new versus just staying with the status quo of no A-frame signs, no sandwich sign board. So thank you for that. Definitely, and I think I understand exactly what you're saying. I think we can make differentiations and definitions as to that.
I think the only issue, and it's one that comes up at this committee on a fairly regular basis then, is enforcement. Creating the appropriate ordinances sounds like we're all on the same page and moving in the right direction. But as so many other issues that relate to accessibility seem to bubble up, ultimately, it comes to a matter of enforcement in our small town here. And I don't know the answer to that question other than more money, more people to do the job and be out on the streets or wherever they need to be, more people in the offices filing the paperwork, all of that. But that's not something that this committee can solve. But I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a matter of enforcement.
Let me ask Mr. Doimus this question. Almost every one of those signs has some contact information on it, whether it's email or phone number. And I know the city's position is they don't, it gets tricky trying to get volunteer community members to enforce various laws and violations. But do you think that a disabled person whose access was blocked would have civil remedies if they were to pursue it?
I can't, let me put it this way. Ethically, it's very hard for me, a lawyer, to opine as to an individual, but I can talk about generalities. And so the answer is yes, I think they could do that. And it is hard, as I heard City Administrator McAdoo mention earlier, too, about volunteer. When you do enforcement, there is certain required trainings under the California Penal Code. They're called 832 trainings. So it's very hard to get volunteers because there's extensive trainings when you're dealing with, people's rights. You're dealing with, so many different things in enforcement. So it is hard to get that through. But enforcement, of course, is the key. And one of the things why this ordinance cleanup is so important is, I think, to provide clarity. For the longest time, for the last decade, staff and everything has been told, we've got an unconstitutional ordinance. What does this mean? And it's kind of created, understandably, this hands-off approach because we don't know what side's up, right? So that's the goal of this, to have a really clear ordinance. So now enforcement becomes much, much easier because those who are enforcing need to understand what they're doing as well. So that's part of the goal for sure.
Mr. Domas, I have a question. Did you say that right
mic's not
now,
on.
no,
Your microphone.
It's on.
yeah. Are you saying that right now none of the sandwich boards are allowed on sidewalks? Because that's not the case.
Well, if
Did I-
they're not allowed.
Right, it's an enforcement issue.
Right.
That's what our court ordinance says. Correct. They're not allowed. There's no allowance for A-frame signs, sandwich board signs, etc.
On any place on the sidewalk?
Correct.
Any place.
Okay, well then the real problem is there's no
They're
enforcement.
prohibited,
I thought we had agreed that they had to have at least 4 feet clearance.
No, that's not the
Okay.
case. All right, then thank you so much for the presentation. I think we've got a really clear.
Yes, I do. I really
Okay.
appreciate it.
Thank
you
you.
so much.
I
Thank
have
you
a
so much.
hearing impairment, and I've almost heard nothing you said.
Okay.
We have a member in the audience who has a question before you go.
I'm new here, sorry.
Can you come to the microphone so we can hear you?
Sorry. I plan to just listen, but I definitely have a little skin in this game. And Sam Henchins, I work at the Museum of Art downtown. One thing that I wanted to mention is more community outreach around this would be fabulous because people don't know that it's illegal to put those signs out. We put signs out, so now I know. I just came into my job and saw signs out, and then I put them out. More people want to be accessible than we know, and if we can help people understand it, put a couple $1,000s behind a social media campaign about why we need to put the signs in a different place. Let's really do community outreach around it. Also, a good point to share back with the housing folks is this signage for affordable housing? Because that's a need. But I think everyone else might be finding their houses online, so they could probably be okay. And I also wanted to just mention, as someone with an invisible disability, Low signage is actually something I've tripped over as someone who looks like they can get around pretty easily. So considering all types of different ways that people interact with the world, I just heard how high a sign can be, and sometimes I wish that signs were higher from the ground because I can't see very low when I'm walking down the street. So that's just something else to consider I wanted to share. And thanks for letting me chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
for your
John.
participation. We welcome more community involvement here.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to echo that. Thank you, John, very much. Really appreciate your time, your patience with us, your input, and what your team is doing.
All right, so the next is the ADA coordinator report.
Thank you, Chair Sorgman. I'll be brief. We're a little bit behind, not too bad, but I just had a few things I wanted to mention. I covered a couple of things earlier already. But let's see, well, Film Festival, we just heard from them. So what we'll plan to do is I'll reach out to the folks from Film Festival and we'll coordinate with the committee. And what they wanted to do is come back as a special meeting. I don't think we need to wait. It sounds like they want to move quickly on their project, so it doesn't make sense to wait until the next meeting, which would be what, March, April, in May. So we'll do a special meeting if y'all are open to it, to bring them in and talk about their planned project. It sounded like there were some questions that did get answered, but I think the committee's interested in digging a little bit deeper on that project.
I just want to throw out there, if there is any hesitation to do a special meeting or because of scheduling conflicts, maybe it's appropriate that the ad hoc look at it as well. Just an option. It sounds like Skylar would prefer that. But
Is there an engineering firm that's doing the remodeling that maybe we also need to have here?
Right, I think that's what they mentioned. They have an architecture firm who's on board, and I think in scheduling, whether it's a special meeting or an ad hoc meeting, they'd be able to bring that team in to present.
now, I heard Skylar's preference, but I don't want to, we would have a quorum even if Skylar wasn't able to participate, so I don't want to exclude anyone who wants to be involved in this discussion. I just pointing out the option if it's problematic.
All right, well, we'll reach out and see. We can do a special meeting and, yeah, just depending on availability. It could also be an ad hoc, right? Okay, and then you haven't heard an update from me in a little bit on those theater ramps that we've been promising. That works. We do have a contractor on board, awarded a contract to do that work. It's just been a little bit shuffling things around in terms of their order of work. It works best for them to do it more at the tail end of their contract. And I don't have an exact date on it, but we are getting close. I'll get an update from the team today. I can send that out to you all. But that is Granada, Arlington, and the new Vic creating a accessible drop-off zone in those three areas. Not necessarily a drop-off zone. I think for the Arlington, it's just we have crosswalks that go straight into a vertical curb. So I'll get an update for you on that for the timing. I talked about the transitions, talked about the font. So the only other thing I wanted to let you all know, if you remember, Jacob, I'm not remembering his last name from, he was on this committee.
Lester Buxton.
Yes, yeah, he was on this committee for a little bit. He's with ILRC, which will soon be named
Access Central Coast.
Central Coast. He reached out to me maybe a month ago. They wanted to meet with me as I was the ADA coordinator for the city. They've been reaching out to ADA coordinators throughout their entire area. So I was able to do that yesterday. I actually met with a few folks from their team, and that was really helpful. I think they want to try to partner with ADA coordinators regionally to facilitate opportunities for education, whether it's in the community or within the organization. And I think it's a great opportunity for partnership. I know some of the members of this committee are on their board, so you're, I'm sure, much more familiar with what they do than I am, but it was a good introduction to that organization, and I look forward to continuing that partnership. That's all I had for ADA coordinator report, and I think that puts us pretty close to on schedule.
All right. Do members have any questions or comments regarding his update? And do we have any public comments? No? All right, so then we move on. I'm sorry, any Zoom hands up?
No.
No, okay. All right, so then we have ad hoc committee reports. Sidewalk committee?
I want to first point out that some of these committees don't meet every time because there's just, so if there's no report, it doesn't mean they're disbanded. They just don't have something. Okay. Well, the first one's the Sidewalk Ad Hoc Committee, and I've asked Nick to read my report on that.
Happy to help. So the ad hoc committee has the following to report. Construction is complete on 32 new ramps on Garden Street between Los Olivos and Victoria. Construction is still ongoing on Haley Street. Haley Street project includes 25 new ramps. Those are complete, plus a new traffic signal at Olive Street that will include an APS. The contractor is currently performing sidewalk repairs to remove uplifts. And just to remind everyone, the APS is the auditory pedestrian signal. Okay. And construction is nearly complete on Upper State Street between Constance and Las Positas, and on De La Vina, San Marcan areas. The ramps are complete, and the contractor will be paving, weather permitting, in late February and early March. Once paving is complete, we can complete the traffic signal repairs and install APSs at State and De La Vina and State and Calle Laureles. Construction is complete on Mountain Avenue in the West Side neighborhood. Construction on the Mesa, which included 22 new ramps along Flora Vista, Fellowship Road, and Red Rose, look like they're complete. Construction is ongoing on San Andres. The contractor has completed sidewalk repairs between Cannon Perdido and Mitchell Torina. Currently, they're working on 12 new ramps at the intersection at Sola, Victoria, and Anapamu. Those should be complete by the end of March. Then San Andreas will be repaved. 2 new projects will start soon, Santa Barbara and Pedregosa. Like the project at Mission in Pedregosa, there has to be some larger elevation changes to make the corners ADA compliant. Grove and San Roque neighborhoods include about 62 ramps. Sidewalk repairs are complete on De La Vina Street between Haley Street and Sola Street. We are working with the Arlington, Granada, and New Vic theaters to schedule ramp construction for the passenger loading zones in front of the theaters. And it sounds like that may happen in May and not be in conflict with the events that they're hosting. We still have not heard from Caltrans about our grants application that will include accessible ramps and APS at traffic signals on their website. They say they'll be releasing results this month. We're going out to bid with another ramp project this spring. The project includes about 50 ramps and sidewalk repairs. Most of the ramps will be in the Upper East neighborhood with a large concentration of missing ramps, especially on Anacapa Street. Construction will likely start this summer or fall. And that's all I have, but there's, I'm curious if Jim knows, the new projects, Grove and San Roque neighborhoods, 62 ramps. Do you know when that might start, or maybe?
No, I didn't get a
Brian
data
knows?
on that.
Okay.
I want to point out, just for your information, It's great to have all these new ramps, but these are not really part of the ADA funding. This is, whenever you do any change to a road, except for just a slurry seal, you must fix the pedestrian crossings. And so all these things are required by state law. So that's a lot of new ramps that we have.
Yeah, and there was 6 ramps scheduled, last I knew. I thought it was gonna happen in this last fiscal year in my neighborhood on Kylarellis. There was some survey painting on the curbs around there early in the year, and I thought that they were scheduled to be done by now, but I haven't heard anything.
I also had a question. You said the Mesa ramps were complete.
That's
according
what
to
the report says, but
Yes?
Well, some of them were done, but not all the corners were done. So it doesn't make sense to me why one side of the street would have a ramp and not the other. Anyway, I thought that would still be continuing, but
Okay, well, why don't you send me that info and I'll talk to Derek?
I'll go around and do a survey.
Okay. And I want to also say, the auditory pedestrian signals, they're looking for more locations to do some, because they're going to do 2 every year based on public input. So Skylar, or you and Bob want to discuss and come up with some new places that you'd like to have some more APS?
Yeah, we can talk about,
Okay.
we can talk about that. That's,
And if anyone that's listening in has an idea, just let us know, and we'll pass the information on.
so it needs to be, so it can be 2 of them that you'll choose, is that right? Or-
Yeah. They claim to have funds for 2 every year.
Okay, and so try to decide within the next month or so?
Yes.
Okay.
Shouldn't we also be reaching out to the Braille Institute to see?
I do work there, so I can
Oh,
take care of
okay.
that.
We've got an inside connection.
Yes, he is the inside.
Okay. A twofer, yeah, okay. All right. So then the next one is the parking ad hoc committee? No report.
parking ad hoc committee hasn't met in some time.
Okay.
I would love to hear from downtown parking, an update on the proposed changes to the automation system that has been in review. It seems like we haven't heard about that in a while.
All right, so I've got that noted. All right, do we have any outdoor dining in State Street interim operations ad hoc? I mean, we've not met, so, okay.
I've talked to Sarah Clark constantly about these things. There's been no problem or no changes in the outdoor dining itself, but they're looking at some movement of making the parklets going out into the sidewalk, but that's just up in the air, so I have nothing to report.
All right, then. I don't think we have anything for the recognition nomination ad hoc.
No, but we should be thinking about it because it's going to be an issue by the next meeting. So,
All right, so what I think we'll do is we'll send out an email to board members to at least keep thinking about that for the next meeting.
cultivate recommendations.
Right. All right. Then the special events ad hoc committee, do you have an update?
I think we spoke about that early in the meeting, and basically, we've requested a follow-up meeting at this point with Parks, so that we can, carry that discussion further, as Karen has suggested.
Seems timely as we're heading into the season.
It was with Sarah, I forget her last name.
Sarah
Clark?
Knowles?
Oh,
Sarah Knowles, yes.
Okay.
We would like that to be set up as soon as possible, since we are going into the summer solstice parade in a few months.
I'm sorry, could you turn on your mic? Thank you.
We'd like to request a ad hoc committee meeting, which includes Sarah Knowles and the Park Department, because we've got to sort of iron out the senior versus the disabled handicap designated spacing, and get Sarah to let the parade people know, and also to get the city aligned with the parking and the bathroom situation. So
And it-
hopefully we can do that in March or early April.
It seemed like Administrator McAdoo was also in favor of doing something for special events, so maybe you could talk to her again, or?
Yep.
Right, well, maybe we can include her in the meeting, or she can visit it via Zoom. But, yeah, we want to get this ironed out for once and all, so there's carryover to all the parades and special events.
And I think one of the concerns or comments from previous is that we need a way to be able to let the public know that these are set up.
Right, and that the wrong people don't use up the spaces before the people we want to use. Because it came to my attention, well, maybe I shouldn't advertise if
Karen-
the wrong people are going to take up the space.
I want to caution, I'm concerned about the classification of wrong people. I think that the elderly qualify as disabled, and I don't know that it's a tricky situation that we're dealing with, and I just want us to be cognizant of that. I understand that the ad hoc committee is trying to provide space for wheelchair accessible people, or wheelchair accessible needs, and I think that some outreach, some education is required, but it feels tricky to me because the elderly are often disabled too, and just because they're not in a wheelchair
Well,
doesn't.
depends on how you define elderly and
Yeah, yeah.
wrong people.
Yeah, I don't know who was there, but
So
just
maybe, I wonder if we could put like a template so that it's, the 30 by 48 wheelchair, so have an accessible sign on it, like our parking spaces, like these are special spaces, so someone wouldn't be sitting there. So you can allocate that and show that this is a wheelchair.
It was roped off with handicap signs. Okay. And I don't know if we have to put a handicap sign on each chair, but it's like it almost doesn't matter. There needs to be a monitor almost.
I think,
For handicap parking is very wide, like, even people who might have a little bit of a visual problem or, a little bit of a knee problem but can still walk. That's a lot of people.
yeah, I don't want to beat the horse completely to death, but there is a difference between elderly and handicapped, and within the handicapped, there's a difference between physically and intellectually or developmentally disabled. And I think clear, concise language, the signage we just talked about, would be appropriate if, in fact, they can set up different specific areas for elderly, or for the retirement homes or retirement communities, or for the specific ones. Whether it's Maravilla or, pick whichever one, let them have their own tent and space and let them reserve 10, 15, 20 spots if they want. Community-wide, having a designated area for the IDD community, which is where I am involved through Hillside, the intellectual and developmentally disabled, have perhaps even greater issues with accessibility, because they also have, most times, a one-on-one aide with them when they're out in public. So there's more to this than just disabled and having disabled space, and Karen is quite right. And if we could get them to separate and create different distinct spaces that could be labeled, and I heard the word, they need to be monitored, that's correct as well. And whether that's volunteers from the different senior residences or the different, whether it's Devereaux or Hillside or, pick your residential facility, that we would have to provide our own.
I agree. I was just thinking
I
that
just
we
don't know
need,
the real answer to it all.
I think we need some sort of partnership, because this is getting a little bit more involved than I think that the city has an obligation to provide. And
Agreed.
It's not about an obligation. It's.
I understand.
If they want to have a community event that is inclusive, and maybe that's a bad word now, but is inclusive of the whole community.
I totally agree with
is
you.
what we need. And And the city, I'm sure the city wants to do that, and they're willing to do that.
Yep, but then when we
Are
start.
they legally by law
I-
have to?
And do-
Maybe not,
and do
but
they
does
have
that
the-
mean they shouldn't?
And do they have the budget? And can we not find some community partnership to help deal with some of this nuance? That's all. I'm not trying to.
Okay, we can talk about that in our ad hoc,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment about disabled and defining disabled and starting like, okay, there's this disability, there's this, but then you're starting to discriminate between the disabilities, and that is not the point.
Right.
So I don't know how you can, I don't know how you can say this is for wheelchair people only, this is for elderly only. I don't know how you can do that.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to it.
Yeah.
But what happened this past year, Karen has described
No, I understand
correctly,
it's an
and that was
issue.
problematic. So
Yeah.
if there was a way to create unique, areas and through education, that certain people need access to this viewing area, whatever it might be. But
Yeah,
I-
the
I-
van had no place to park. They had to do drop-offs and runs because all the senior homes had taken up, all the vans had taken up all the parking spaces and all the seating spaces, and that is not what I put
That
the
wasn't
effort
your
into.
intention.
Being out there before I was
Yeah.
going on a trip out of town, setting things up, and then to find out there was no space for the people I set up. So this has to be worked out.
I agree.
All right, then, thank you.
I just say real quick, I liked Elizabeth's suggestion that maybe you put in the
The little wheelchair.
required
Yeah.
space. But I think the problem, Karen, if you put a chair up there and say it's for handicap or disability, anyone's going to sit there. If you don't have a chair, then it has to be a wheelchair is going to come on. So maybe we don't put a chair in every spot, but I don't know.
Well, there's helpers, there's people in walkers. I mean,
Yeah, I'm just saying
I
some of them
mean-
should have no chair, so that a person in a wheelchair would have a place to
yes,
go.
well, we'll work that out in
Okay.
the meeting, hopefully with
So,
Sarah.
so I was in Greece this past summer, or last summer, and they are trying to do a lot of accessibility. But, for example, accessible restrooms are locked. You have to get a key from an attendant. So that's how they monitor it, because they have a lot of people taking advantage of accessible features. But that's not really
Yeah. it's-
right either.
Right.
So so their monitoring style is a little different in some cases, but, so I mean, it's,
All right, so I think we have a break, and then
Yeah.
at 11:10, we're going to have the ADA transition plan update. Oh, wait, sorry, the Santa Barbara Police Station project.
so I'm just,
F,
I'm
ADA
just
transition plan.
cautious of doing extra control.
Right. Okay, sorry, guys, we're running a little bit late here. The ADA transition plan ad hoc, do you want to,
Just-
we're going to have the ADA
right,
transition
I just
plan
wanna say
update.
We had 2 meetings in the last couple of weeks,
Okay.
and we're going to have a meeting right after
Yeah.
this, so
Yep.
I won't give any examples.
Okay, then the Santa Barbara Police Station. I was wondering, I looked at the plans, 602 sheets of them. But I'm wondering, are those the approved plans?
I believe they would be.
Because I didn't see any stamps on them. And the
Okay.
reason that I ask is I was a little alarmed. Here we go. Again, 602 sheets, so I had to do this in pieces. The plan still showed the baby changing station where they're not supposed to be. They clearly show a path of travel. They call it a circulation route. There is doesn't seem to be any level change nor any domes. Domes are not allowed in new construction. It has to be a raised curb. Or they could put some kind of guard rail around to separate the vehicular way. The contrasting yellow stripes or the stair striping, there was a detail, but they don't tell that it's supposed to be a contrasting color. The dimensions for the handrails are wrong, the extension. They include the circular piece, which is not supposed to. I can go on about all of these things that I saw in the plans, and I thought, I can't, it takes a lot of time. Don't know if I'm looking at the right set of plans. Perhaps these were changes that were already caught in plan check. So is it possible to get the approved set of plans?
Yeah, I'll figure out whether we've got a final plan set that's
Okay.
been approved. We can share that with you. We're also willing to sit down and meet and go over any of those observations that you've had. Thank you for going through all
Yeah.
of those sheets. That's a
Only
big
602.
effort.
602. I mean,
Yes.
they were electrical, mechanical, but I kind of was I was
Yeah.
trying to see where, is it on some other sheet maybe? So
Okay.
it's like, these are really common mistakes that are missed in plan check because there's so many sheets, so, but still, it's,
And this is a great time
yes.
to correct those
Yeah.
things, better than in 2 years from now.
Okay. Yeah, if you can do that, that would be great.
Yep.
All right, then I think we have a break and then maybe a 5-minute break because we have an ADA update that should have 40 minutes before we end, okay?
some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're gentle and wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh, 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 oh,
So the next item on our agenda here is the ADA transition plan, and we are going to be wowed by the information that Craig's going to provide us, from what I understand, so.
And I'm going to speak just for a minute to give him a moment to get online. So similar to John Doimus, who had some family things come up, Craig Schallenberger also, he needed to be on the road today for family reasons, kind of unexpectedly, but he's able to join us remotely, and I understand the ad hoc has had a couple of meetings in the last week or so with him, so it sounds like we heard his voice, so I've done my delay duty to get him logged in. I'll let him take it from here.
So
Thanks,
Craig, I hope that you're not driving and having the meeting while you're driving, so.
No, I'm actually sitting in an airport right now. So hopefully the intercom doesn't bust in while I'm giving this presentation, but we'll see how it goes. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm just going to go through a PowerPoint slideshow, which we previewed with the ad hoc committee twice in the last week. Um, and it should only take about 5 minutes, but I'll ask if we can do questions at the end versus during each of the slides. And I think it'll be more productive that way. So I want to just briefly start off with a recap of what the transition plan produced in 2007 is. And this was the plan produced by Gilda Puente Peters Architects. At previous updates, we have focused solely on these what we call the detailed surveys, the priority locations, these 9 locations throughout the city that are the most public facing and public interfacing sites with the city. So I think we're all familiar with these: City Hall, Central Library, East Side Library, Cabrillo Arts Pavilion, Community Development and Public Works Building, West Side Community Center, Mackenzie Park, Alice Keck Park Memorial, and the police station. So what I want to do today is what I've done is gone back, as we talked about last time, and I have completed the back checking of the all 9 of these sites. And these are the statistics. There are a total of about a little over 3,500 items with an $8 million value, which was the estimate done in 2007. We'll get back to that later, but roughly double that for today's dollars. As of January 30th this year, we have completed 1,814 of those items through various projects in the last 17 years. So that leaves the remaining of a little over 1,700 items to complete. It's important to note, though, that this is a little bit misleading. What we don't want to do is say, okay, it took us 17 years to finish 50% of this. Is it going to take another 17 years to finish the other 50%? And the answer is actually no, I don't think so. We have many items in the remaining that are readily achievable and relatively simple. And we'll get into the implementation forecast soon, but the point is, I don't want this to be misleading, that the city is not planning on taking 17 more years to address this transition plan. And then we'll talk about this more at the end of the presentation, because the ad hoc committee and Maya met a couple of times to discuss priorities. But what we talked about in general was doing all of the readily achievable items. And then in the Puente Peters, they had prioritized these items on a 1 through 4 basis, with 1 being the highest priority and 4 being the lowest priority. But I think once we get into the bid packages, it won't really matter what the Puente Peters priorities were, because they'll all be essentially anything readily achievable will be implemented through the various bid packages, one way or the other. So then I want to briefly get the entire committee here up to speed on the last 2 meetings with ad hoc. What we did yesterday, in fact, was the most productive of the 2 meetings, was to definitively prioritize items that are remaining in the transition plan. And I'm sorry, I have to do this off of memory. I did summarize it in an email as a meeting minutes to the ad hoc yesterday, but I don't have that handy. But essentially, what we decided was, let's focus first and foremost on path of travel from parking / right-of-way to the building entrances being the highest priority. Second priority would be anything related to doors as you go into the buildings and throughout the buildings, that the openings are second on the priority list. Third were anything to do with restrooms. To be perfectly honest, there are several problems with many of the restrooms in terms of available size. Frankly, the footprints, square footage of these restrooms are just not adequate to make them fully compliant. So some of this is going to have to be deferred to a major remodel project. And then the fourth was directional signage. The ad hoc committee expressed frustration that, okay, where is the accessible entrance, for example, and where are the accessible restrooms? And I think it'd be very helpful to just create through signage clear, identifiable paths to get to those places. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to jump back, sorry. We have the detailed surveys of these 9 locations, but what the transition plan, and we didn't talk about this previously, also includes are these general evaluations. And these are anything to do, basically any city-owned property, fire stations, fleet, parks and rec, public right-of-way, sidewalks, etc. And there are also these enterprise locations, the airport, parking garages, the water treatment plant, and then the waterfront itself has. So these all have their own evaluations that we have yet to back check and that is in progress, but it will need some prioritization of its own, and that will take some time. But I don't want to get bogged down in that. I just wanted to mention it that point is we are not only focused on these 9 facilities, we are focused citywide. Okay, the next item was just to update the funding. Sorry, one sec, please.
For Hope Jacket at the USO, please respond back to your item. Anyone leaving a blue Christopher Ho jacket at the USO.
Okay, sorry about that. So this is just an update to the funding slide that was provided at the last quarterly meeting. Nothing has really changed. We're still continuing on with the annual funding, and then this amount here, what you can see is what's available currently, which is great. And we'll get to the next slide, I'll talk about implementation, but these are the dollars that we're working with that are strictly transition plan funds.
Attention passengers, passenger
Sorry,
Denise Dye.
Excuse me, Craig?
Please respond back to Dan.
Craig?
I'm here, Jim.
It's actually Michael, just a member of the committee. Just a quick question on the plan update funding page that was just previously up with the amount available. So on the far right, those amounts available are what are currently available, cumulative from what was funded, what was spent. That's just the net. That's what's remaining from.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
And Craig, I'd asked you yesterday, how come there's still zeros on physical 24 and 25 for,
Nothing was allocated or funded to it.
but
Well,
We
but
thought
be
it was.
clear, that's just to do with the where the funds come from. So Measure C is one source, but the general fund is another source. So Measure C isn't always allocated, but the bottom line is the $350,000 annual is continuing. It just didn't come from Measure C specifically.
All right, I think he wanted us to save the questions to last, so.
Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so the next slide is the next steps. So what we are doing is these, as I mentioned previously, the general surveys, the citywide non-primary locations, that assessment is ongoing. Now, the next step is the implementing of the bid packages, and I'll talk about that in more detail in a
In the
moment.
interest of aviation security, do not leave your
Geez, this
luggage
is really
unattended at
annoying.
any
Sorry.
time. Do not transport an object
One
of
sec.
contact.
Way to do that. He's
Muted his phone.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. So again, we're in the process of creating the bid packages now that the prioritization has been identified. And then going forward, so what we talked about in the ad hoc committee is Maya and I are going to produce the formal bid packages, and we're committing to having those prepared before the next AAC quarterly, which is in May. And in the meantime, what we'll do is have the ad hoc meetings, the ad hoc committee will review those bid packages before we issue them to the contractors. So we're looking at getting the bid packages out in this next couple of months, awarding the contracts, spring, summer, fall, actually starting the work. And by this time next year, we're really shooting toward having those next 1,000 line items completed in the transition plan. So again, here is I also wanted to mention there are, outside of the transition plan funds, there are many projects that the city is currently has in progress that will address transition plan items, but not using transition plan funds. And I think that's important because there was some concern previously that transition plan funds were
The Salt
used
Lake City Airport
for
is smoke-free.
repairs or deficiencies, that type of thing. So this will at least, more than offset whatever those funds were used in the past. So these are just some examples. City Hall upgrades project is currently in design. Police station is underway. Harbor Way, there's a path of travel project that we're working on. De La Guerra Plaza, you've probably all heard about. Alice Keck Park, Memorial Gardens, barrier removal, and the airport bus, not just the bus stop, but there's a whole path of travel to and from the terminal airport itself that's all completely accessible. And this is not a comprehensive, exhaustive list. These are just some examples that I wanted to throw out there that are non-transition plan funded, but addressing accessibility. Okay, so these are some examples of bid packages that we discussed. Signage, doors and hardware, toilet accessories, grinding concrete where there are uplift and cracks. And then as we've talked about previously, we are working toward correcting deficiencies. The library, Elizabeth, I know you did a very helpful report, and those items are being corrected as we speak. Some of them are already completed. And the Cabrillo Arts Pavilion, I want to not get into that too deeply because one of the outcomes of the ad hoc committee was what we need to do is revisit Cabrillo Arts Pavilion specifically, and then come back to the committee with more information there. And that's pretty much it for the slideshow. I think the way the meeting works is public comments first, and then we do questions or discussion. If that's right.
No, I think it's the comments from the
We have questions first from the
members.
and
right,
then public comments.
comment. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, this is inverted. So
Yeah. Right.
fire away.
Okay, so who wants to make a comment? Do you want to start with Michael?
A question.
Yeah,
Well,
comment.
I don't really have a question, just
Okay.
thank you very much. This looks like we've made some real progress.
Jim?
Thank you, Craig. I have one question. Is it possible to put in stair striping as one of our main priorities? That's something that always seems to get missed in town. It's not very expensive, but I think that should be part of the entrance to buildings. So,
Oh, yes, thank you, Jim. You did mention that in the ad hoc. Sorry, again, I'm going off of memory here.
okay, thank you.
Maya, do you have a comment?
Thanks.
I think one item, Craig, that you forgot to mention is the counters, service counters. That was brought up.
Yes, yeah, service counters. Great point.
Skylar?
No, I was just stretching it.
Okay. Madame, no? Nick? Oh, wait, did you have a comment? I thought you said no.
No, I'm fine. I've been in
So-
the committee.
Craig, there was one slide, you don't need to go back to it, but in your presentation, you've touched on something that made me think of information I'd want to bring to your attention, and that was public parking garages, city parking garages. There's apparently another effort outside of the Gilda, within the Gilda transition plan that discusses parking, and I just wanted you to be aware of efforts underway to update the automated parking kiosks and whatnot, and a previous effort where this committee tried to affect change and we were steamrolled by the downtown parking committee or downtown parking group under then Rob Dayton, who promised us, oh, these changes will be fully accessible, and of course they weren't. And so there was a major investment in technology that didn't work for accessibility, and now we're going at it again. Now, 7 years later, we're looking at another major investment in technology, and I would sure love to have your eyes on that, making sure that we don't miss the opportunity again.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I witnessed that personally. Having these kiosks without a landing or reach range up behind curbs, I totally understand your point.
Thank you.
So are we silent? No. I just want to make a comment. First of all, I think your presentation, what you might have done, I mean, really organized. It's not something that I think the board has seen previously in terms of just really being able to break down all of the different categories and doing the inventory of what work has been done and what still remains. So thank you for all that effort. I know that it's not easy and it's not the most entertaining and fun to have to do. So it's exciting as a board member to see that we're coming to the place of maybe being able to say that these 9 priority projects may be getting to the place of, having them mostly accessible. And so then thinking in the future of the, I don't know, what, 100 buildings or 110 buildings that the city owns, what the next priorities will be. So, I think the board needs to think about that, and it's an exciting place to be. So thank you.
Yes, those will be some happy troubles to be looking at new priorities.
Yes.
Some coffee, general, and Zoom comments at all?
Oh, okay. So do we have any members of the public? No. Do we have any Zoom hands that go up?
No online comment.
Okay. So,
Well, thank you, Craig. I appreciate all you've done on this. It's impressive.
It feels like it's now, at least for me, for the first time, it's manageable. As our chair has said, you've been able to break it down, taking the time, the patience, the perseverance necessary to, put it into a form that really just seems manageable, something that could actually be addressed. And that itself is pretty exciting. So I echo the thanks. Thank you.
I want to thank Craig and Maya also, but Craig, you showed us a master Excel sheet that I thought you were going to send out soon. You haven't mentioned it. Do you want to tell the rest of the board about what you've prepared, or is that a secret still?
No secret. In fact, I did send it yesterday, I thought, to the ad hoc committee.
I did not receive it.
Oh, well.
Did you, Suzanne? Or Nick?
looking now, I can't recall whether I saw it or not.
Okay.
But it does look like he sent a message out to Suzanne, Jim, and Nick. There's an Excel file attached. It was sent yesterday. I don't know the time, but
Well, just to, not to get too deep into it, but those statistics that I showed are gleaned from this massive spreadsheet. So you're all welcome to review it. What I did with Maya and I did with the ad hoc committee was to show kind of how to use that spreadsheet, because there are filters available. There are the different columns that of all the different types of information that are in this spreadsheet. All it is the Puente Peters report in a spreadsheet format, which gives you the ability to basically turn it into a checklist. And so you're welcome to review that. I'm happy to send that to everyone on the committee. There's no secrets to answer the question, Jim.
Okay.
And, I wanted to share something that I just received something in the email. Maybe I'll forward that to you. But I don't know if you're aware of the ADA symposium that's coming up in June, I believe. I don't know if the
Yes,
city.
I am aware.
All right, so maybe that's a great place for you and Maya to be able to attend that symposium. I think there's something like 80 different classes that you can attend, and lots of speakers. I mean, in the right-of-way issues, all kinds of information that's would be really helpful to know, so that we can implement and just be more efficient and effective with what monies we do have. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Is that the same as the Government Disability Summit, I think in Ventura?
No,
Or that
this is,
different?
I think, oh gosh, it's back east. I don't know
Oh, okay.
where, but I was just looking at it yesterday, thinking if I wanted to go or not. So, all right.
I'm
Then I
sorry.
think we're adjourned.
We do have one public comment.
Oh, all right.
Barbara Silver.
All right, Barbara. We can't hear you, so maybe you're muted if you want to unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Still unmuted?
No, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted to say, after leaving this committee, I went on to the Downtown Parking Committee, and though I did not reapply, they have not met for the last 3 months. So next question about what's happening, I don't know what's happening. Nothing is happening that they care to share. And then the other thing is, I also went on to the Measure C Oversight Committee, and they will meet next week. So if there are any questions you'd like me to raise, let me know. Give them to Jim, who can forward them to me, or send them to me directly. But Craig, thank you very much. Greg, thank you very much for differentiating between how the funding shows up as zero, whether it's Measure C funding or transition funding, because in the report previously issued by staff, that was not clear. When I asked for a clarification, it was really quite obfuscating. So just to let you know, I'm out there in the furrows working away. So get in touch with me. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Barbara. So much.
Great to hear your voice, Barbara.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Then I think we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.
That's all.